People with weird, obscure jobs. What is your job and how did you get the job? My job's not weird. I'm a welder. But what I do isn't very common. I build Virginia-class submarines. I don't know if this is obscure, but my boyfriend is a high-rise window cleaner. There are only 4 in our city. He loves his job. Sometimes when he is working, I will go to the city to the building he is cleaning and look up at him on the street. So cute. Water quality testing. I go around and collect samples for various testing to ensure the water meets the state standards. I got lucky and met someone who was volunteering at my previous job and she told me to apply. Was not the direction I saw my career going, but it was definitely worth it. I used to be a hand model. Apparently I have really good looking hands. Although they look completely normal to me. People were always asking me how I got into it, so it was fun to bullshit people I was discovered on the street. Now I moisturize 15 times a day and sleep with my hands in plastic bags. The money was great, but I'd have to spend long days on set being careful not to wreck my manicure. Which they paid for, of course. Also paid for the time it took to get the manicure. Mostly did TV commercials. Now I tell people at parties I'm a retired international hand model but gave up show business for the much more worthwhile and rewarding career of teaching kids to read. I have a job tracking rodents in restaurants. I set up cameras, movement sensors, IR sensors and other gear, and get an idea of the problem and how to fix it. Here's a video of a couple of teenage girls checking out one of my cameras. Sometimes I'm in a hot roof area of a restaurant trying to get the super rats to back off and let me work. I use a Bluetooth speaker and Prodigy on full volume. Who knew rats don't like Prodigy? Despite that, I love my job and the pay is pretty good. I'm a house manager for a family of 4. Basically I'm a female butler. I've worked for them for 14 years, starting as the kids' nanny. They're my second family pretty much. I organize tradespeople, holidays, birthdays, daily meals, dinner parties, housekeeping, the list goes on. It's challenging at times but keeps me on my toes and I enjoy that. I used to cut pictures of wee-wees and hose off packaging of adult toys. All day every day. I got the job by being able to pass a drug test. Boss. Me. Boss. You sure? Because if you don't pass I won't hire you. Me. Boss, if I pay for your piss test and you fail I'll be mad. Me. I haven't smoked in like 3 months, don't worry. Did you keep all the cut-off ding-dongs to make sexy confetti? Super small organic farmer. Was born into. It's been going for 3 generations counting my cousin's children. I'm a hostage survival trainer. I was working in international development within IT, and was asked to go and sort out the finance system in Iraq back in 2007. The ministry I was working in got attacked by a militia and myself along with my 4 guards got captured. Over time the guards were killed and I got released in an exchange deal after being held for over 2.5 years. I did an armor about it some years ago. My dad told me of this one time he went to my mom's work Christmas party. She was a banker. As the bankers talked shop and tried to sound impressive, the spouses grew bored and talked among themselves. The guy who drew the biggest crowd was this man who worked at a toilet factory and he did quality control. His job was to flush toilet paper and simulated poop down the toilet. The people at the party, especially the men, were riveted by his descriptions and peppered him with questions while all these upper management bankers looked on with irritation. In the summer I guard and clean the toilet units, not the toilets for festivals. I got the job trying to find a cheap way to go to the big festivals and this organization was looking for volunteers. So all I have to do is stand in front of the units. Make sure the ground stays clean. Everyone had toilet paper and clear a block of units so the cleaning team can do their job. Another part of the job is making sure no one dies or passes out in such a unit. You can't imagine how many drunk, often naked people we need to get out of these units and escort them to the first aid. I design water parks. I went to college for graphic design and advertising. In my last year I had to do an internship, so I took one at an aquatic engineering firm to help organize photos. 10 years later I am a project manager and create resort deck and water park programs. I spent a year on a team reclassifying the Duke University library system from Dewey Decimal to Library of Congress. Had to learn like 4 different alphabets just to label them properly. Mine isn't necessarily weird, but how I fell into it was. Around 10 years ago I was working in the IT industry. I decided to help my dad out one weekend sell hunting gear at a Militaria expo, basically antique military gear and army disposal. One of the sellers had a vampire killing kit. Knowing very little about antiques at the time, I pulled out each piece, checking them over. The story checked out. Did some research on my phone throughout the day and found out that it could be a fake in 2 ways. It could be a kit put together by someone out of antique pieces to make it seem real, and technically even if it was authentic, it was a Victorian fake. With the fear of vampires in the late 19th century, con men put together vampire killing kits and sold them to rich businessmen visiting Europe. What stood out to me though was the main reason I bought it. In the middle of the kit was a crucifix with an ivory inlay. That doubled as a goddamn percussion pistol. Long story short, I took a chance, spent $1,000 on it and got persecuted by my father for such a dumb move. I didn't have much in my savings at the same. I took it to Ripley's, believe it or not, in Australia, and they flew someone out from the US to look at it, which was pretty exciting. Within 5 minutes of looking at it, they offered me a ridiculous sum of money for what I thought was a large investment to begin with. While in ways I do regret selling the kit, it allowed me to start a career in the antiques trade. 5 years later I moved to the UK to study a degree, and now I specialize in rare obscure antiques that have allowed me to travel all around the world sourcing new weird objects. I work as a handyman at a hotel. We do everything from maintenance to build mobile bars in funny shapes. We basically just do what the manager wants us to do. So we get funny projects like installing LED and 24/7 music into old broken jukebox machines. I was just lucky a former person quit, so I could take the position. I have been an online community manager for over 20 years. I started in video games and moved into technology companies. I've worked on everything from Star Wars to telecommunications networking equipment and software that help companies move data fast. It started as a hobby. I was a web developer, so very fluent with the web. Started a fan site and grew up at large. Moved on to volunteer for another game company who eventually hired me full-time. I work in QC quality control for media. In one company they occasionally paid me to watch porn to make sure it was in sync and in good quality for video on demand distribution. In another company I spent years watching movies before release in secure theater-like rooms, to make sure the files are ready for distribution, subtitles and audio in sync. No picture corruptions. Stuff like that. I always got to watch the biggest movies of the year in a giant screen weeks before they were released, sometimes months. I got the job by going to film school. I transport horse embryos, oocytes, and semen. I got the job because my sister is an equine vet who specializes in reproduction. I make whiskey. Not super weird, but I'd say on the rarer side of jobs. And it took a shitload of time, luck, skill and perseverance to get where I am. I used to work on a lavender farm. It's totally unrelated to my field of study and incredibly difficult in terms of manual labor. But man, was it a beautiful place. I tended to the plants, took care of goats, and did processing for the herbs and honey. My grandparents are farmers, and so I grew up with mediocre knowledge of field work and beekeeping, and when a friend's mom decided to start a business centered around lavender, she asked me to help out for the summer. Concrete petrographer. I just started this month. I studied geology in college, and now my job is to look at concrete using petrographic methods I learned at school and conduct ASTM tests to determine quality of concrete. Very interesting work because concrete is engineered rock and there's a lot more to it than you think. Misread this as concrete photographer. Yours is much more interesting. Past job, I worked at a whorehouse. I was the receptionist. Guys would come and I'd buzz them in after confirmation of their appointment from the intercom. They would enter, check in, get then a water or pop, take payment, then I'd call the girl from the intercom and they would lead him to the room. It is technically an adult massage parlor. I applied off Craigslist, went for the interview. Only real rule was receptionists cannot become escorts and escorts cannot after chose to be reception. Read this as warehouse, and was genuinely intrigued that the warehouse workers would need to buzz in and have their attendance confirmed. I work in a clinical lab where I get to play with baby sweat for a bit of my day. We are testing for chloride level. Increased chloride in sweat is one of the diagnostic markers for cystic fibrosis. I am a clinical laboratory scientist. Not all clinical labs perform this test, but I am lucky enough to work at a lab where we do a couple interesting low-volume tests. I mix fire retardant for fighting wildfires. A lot of people know that airplanes drop retardant on fires but don't think about the millions of dollars of infrastructure that is behind that operation. Everyone who works at my base started by working at the local ski resort. It's a good way to earn enough money in the summer to coast all winter, so we keep the jobs among fellow ski bums. I'm a Chiron operator. I trigger motion graphics on live TV. I was an art student and also was in stage crew in high school. These things got me jobs backstage in theater, which got me a job in TV doing normal stuff like cameraman and stuff like that. Since I was an art major, I asked if I could do graphics and they let me on the weekends. And my specialty eventually turned to the Chiron, which ingests the graphics that artists make and plays them back through the switcher that controls the news broadcast. It's not technically an art position, but at my job specifically I could make the graphics in After Effects and Photoshop during the day if I have a computer free, and in the afternoon I play the Chiron. Usually you are one or the other, because Chiron operators don't need art skills. It's just another tech job like audio operator or camera operator or stage manager or whatever. These kinds of jobs are getting rarer because they are being automated. But since I'm also an artist, I get to keep my job, because if someone leaves I can take their job. I was a puppeteer for many years, and I actually got that job from an ad in the classifieds. It cracks me up that there is a scene in Being John Malkovich where he tries to find puppeteer in the classifieds and fails. I'm one of 2 employees at a pet crematory. I work as an air traffic controller. Not weird, but not many of us around. I pretty much fell into it after passing an aptitude, and it's just been swell since. Albeit, the classic phrase from strangers, "Isn't that the job with the most suicides?" It might be, but I don't know anyone. It's actually super chill and rewarding when you get it right. We always try get it right, but when you get it super right you're dead pleased. I watch TV commercials for a living. I basically make sure there is no vulgar language, offensive material or unsubstantiated claims being made. I got this job through a recruiter and I told them I was interested in media. Best job I've ever had. I cleaned grills for super rich people in Palm Beach. Even got to clean Michael Jordan's at one point. And it was recommended to me from a friend who was in sobriety with me after I got clean. Official court stenographer. I type everything everyone says in court. I was told about it in high school and thought it sounded cool, so I went for it. Took 5.5 years in college. But I'm nationally certified to type 260 WPM and regularly push above 300 WPM in court. So not job, but company, industry. I was their first marketing person. I worked at a company that specialized in phased array ultrasonic non-destructive testing. The technicians made a shit ton of money and got to work in crazy places like nuclear power plants in Canada and offshore oil rigs in Norway. They even worked on some of the NASA launching pads. I'll answer for a friend of mine, former college roommate. He works for a company which makes coin and paper money sorting and counting machines. They pay him to stay home and be on call. He's a happy guy. I don't know how he got the job, but he's extremely mechanically inclined and pretty inventive. Though calculus tripped him up and he failed college. When he was in high school, he mounted a model rocket like a hood ornament on his car, controlled by a button on the dash. Push the button and it fires the rocket. Gets cut off in traffic. You've just messed with the wrong techie, buddy. Fires guided missile, hood ornament. You know when you're watching a sports program and you see the little pop graphic in the corner, i.e., a baseball player's stats, or an advertisement for Easy Mac, or stay tuned for Saved by the Bell at 9. Yeah, that was me. I updated those graphics and uploaded them to Fox Sports. Since Fox Sports is a 24-hour channel, there's always one guy in the office 24 hours a day. I'm diver. When I was 13 I started diving, and in the army, I did it, too. So I love my job now as an underwater worker. I spend about 80% of my day designing those large overhead signs you see on the highway. I work in a lab where I raise moths. I got it by telling my lab partner that I love bugs and he hooked me up. I'm a potter. Not sure if that fits the bill for weird. I used to be the manager for a museum art school, and began taking classes there years ago, eventually transitioned into being a full-time potter and pottery teacher.